Okay, so I've got 3ds Max open, so I can go through the setup of your massing for the 3D design that you're doing, or the modelling, and I'm assuming that you're going to base it around a 3D model of a vehicle that you've downloaded. So if you're not sure how to do that, make sure you have a look at the steps that I've put onto YouTube in the video there that shows you how to import 3D models. And there is a bit of an art to that, so make sure you can do that. And we've got here a few different sites open that you can use to download 3D models. So for example, if you're looking for a 3D model of a boat, you could search for something like this, 3D model, sorry, not 3DS, 3D model boat, and you'll find dozens of them. So I've already downloaded my model, and now I want to work on that. I'll show it right there. So I want to work on that in 3ds Max to start with. So I'm going to start a new file with the original startup template in the top left corner there, and I'll just double click on that. And so now I want to bring in the model that I've already downloaded. So to do that in Max, you go to the main menu, and then under Import, you go to Merge. And then I will find my file in here. So there's a helicopter, and there's a tugboat, and I have some others that I've downloaded as well. But maybe something different, I'll do the helicopter this time. So, so I can choose that file, click open, and then to select everything, you can just click all on the bottom left there and click OK, and then it'll bring it in. So remember, with the view controls in Max, it's a little bit different to Revit. To orbit, it's Alt, hold down Alt, and then hold down the middle mouse button, and that's the shortcut for orbit, so you can have a good look at the model. And then I'm going to click on the button in the bottom right corner to bring back the other viewports. So the bottom right corner. Yeah. And so then I'm going to right click in the top viewport, zoom out so I can see the whole model, and I'm going to go to the Tools menu and then Measure Distance. So I'm just going to double click to start and then click once to finish. So that's how you use the measure tool in Max. It's always double click to start. And so you can see there it's telling me the distance is 545. So that's not very good. This helicopter should be, well, that's what we need to know as well. So that's in the units that it's using. So I'm going to go to the Customize menu and then Units Setup. And here it's on generic units. So I'm going to change it to metric and then millimeters. Okay. So now I'll go back, again, Tools, Measure Distance, double click, and then click once. And then you can see now it's telling me 13 meters, or 13,000 millimeters, 662 mil. So that's pretty good. That's probably the size this should be. I'm going to then maybe zoom in and have a look at something like a door, and again use the measure distance tool to check that size. So a little bit over 1200, that's probably about right for a helicopter door. They're not that high. So I'd say this is the right scale. And but I'm going to just do one last check and maybe measure inside the cockpit there, or the cabin actually, and just measure distance there. So it's about 1.5 meters. Helicopters are pretty cramped, I think, so that's again probably about right. So I'm happy with the scale. If you're not, you can go to the scale tool and then right click on that button if you want to bring up the typing, and then you can type in a new scale factor there. So that's a percentage. If you can't read it, it says 100. So if I want to make it double, type in 200, enter, and it'll make it exactly double the size. If I type in 50 now, it'll make it half the size, so it'll go back to the size it was. So So you can scale things fairly easily in Max as well, a lot easier than in Revit, definitely. So I've got that object there really just as a reference, and now I want to start modelling around it. And this is where Max is a really flexible program if you just want to use it as a modeler. So over here on the Create panel, I've got the geometry option selected, and then it's on standard primitives, which is what it should begin on. And then I'm just going to maybe start with a box. And I might just click and drag to get the form that I'm after, and then bring it up, and that gives me something that could be a wall or any sort of object in Max. And then it's on scale still, so up here I'm going to change back to move, and I can click and drag to move that around. Can go to the Modify tab now if I want to change it. So it's on the Create tab. If I go to the top right there, that's the Modify tab, and then we've got the length there. If you can't read that, it says 930 mil. But rather than typing in, I'm just going to click and drag on the arrows. You can see there that stretches it. It's fairly interactive. Same with the width and the height. So whenever you see arrows like that, you can just click and drag on those to interactively adjust things. And you can build up fairly complex models just by using boxes sometimes. So if you hold down Shift, then drag the same way you do to move. So here I'm just going to drag with that yellow square. That copies.
What are you aiming for?
So I'm doing a conceptual model, modelling around this copter as a reference.
You're going to model the shape around the copter?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're not going to copy the copter?
No, definitely not. No. And I think that's the key to this project, not having an obvious vehicle or something plonked in the space that you can see.
No, totally.
So then I could get in and...
You're just going to make rectangles and shapes and things. You're going to make an abstracted box.
That's right.
Going from the height to the depth.
Exactly, yeah. So you might make something that fits around it, and so that could be an approach that you want to use. And then, okay, so I can get the second one, maybe it can be moved in a bit tighter, and then you can rotate that as well. So it's on move. Next to that, you've got the rotate button. You can start to adjust these things. And then you can right-click to switch between move, rotate, and scale as well. And then again, I can just copy this and Shift. So Shift to copy with any of these tools. So again, if I hold down Shift and then click and drag, I'll just do it on the Y-axis this time. I'm going to copy it up. And notice I'm leaving it on copy because I want these to all be different. Oh yeah. You can make all sorts of...
Like in Revit?
Yeah, of course, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, I'm just starting with primitives, but yeah, you can make anything. So so I'll just make a few more boxes though, just because you can do so much with them. So say here I want some boxes that are all the same. So maybe there'll be a good spot for these, maybe here. So I'll just do a box here. And then might just rotate it a little bit, and then go back to move. Okay, so I'm going to then use Shift to drag it, but this time I'm going to make it an instance rather than a copy, just to show you what instance does, basically. So I'll increase the number of copies as well, so I'll make it have 4 or 5 actually. So it does all those in one go, saves a lot of time. And then now, if I go and adjust one of them, they all change. Okay, because I used instance. Right, so an instance is identical. Yep. So so they're always going to be the same. So when I change these, they all change as a group. But now, maybe I want that one to be different. So you can right-click on the object in the modify panel. So where it says box there, I'm going to right-click and then make unique. Yep. And now I can change it, and the others don't change. Yep.
So how do you define the spacing between those sort of?
Oh, when I copied it. When I copied it, that set the space. So when I copied the first one, I dragged it, and that they all had the same spaces.
So can you space them differently?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. But see, it's like modelling by eye, by hand. You don't always need to measure everything with this sort of program. You can. There are ways of making it accurate, but you don't always have to. So actually, well, I'll just change these gradually. So again, make unique.
Did you do it gradation by numerical, like knowing of gradation? You're going to do this sort of like highlight them all and then drop them.
Oh, you can. You can.
Each box.
You can. You can.
So do it in a row rather than do one by one.
You can, but again, it's more like modelling by hand than using a CAD program. So when you model by hand, you just cut things, you measure it out, and you cut them yourself. You don't tend to rely on, calculations to.
What about you want to void inside, like that, create a void?
Oh yeah, you can do all of that as well. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, of course. Yeah. But again, it's better to think of it more like the way you model by hand, where you're not going to be getting out your scale ruler all the time, and you're not going to be doing calculations. You model it by looking, and that's the way you tend to use these programs. That's why they're often thought of in the same way as your hand modelling. So again, here another example, just with maybe a different type of object. So I'll go to a cylinder, and then again, you can do lots with those as well. So maybe we want something that follows in this direction, and oh yeah, yeah. So most of the basic forms you can make as primitive. So here though, I'm going to do a multiple copy. So for that, you've got the array tool. So with that,
Why not instance?
well, you've got the same options there with array. So you've got copy, instance, and don't worry about reference for now, but you've got copy and instance here as well.
Why are we using array instead of instance?
No, this is, so copy and array, they're options with any type of copy, whether it's an array or a copy or...
Same function.
Yeah, yeah. So this lets you put in...
I was wondering why you choose one of
Well, yeah, so this lets you do more complex patterns. When you're doing copy normally, you can only copy in one direction.
Okay, and arrays like in AutoCAD where you can copy like this table settings.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. Exactly. So here I'm going to turn on the preview, and then...
Did you teach me something?
Yeah, yeah. So, but here, notice how we can't see a change, but I'm then going to increase the X value. It's going to click and drag there. So notice how now I've got the cylinders being repeated. So I'm going to change the Y value as well. So it's a bit more, it's actually more powerful than AutoCAD or Revit, but it's also, it's different.
What is that actually doing? Change direction.
Yeah, so it's doing X and Y. So X is across, Y is up. So if you do X and Y, that's going to make it diagonal. So if I wanted to follow the angle of the copter blade, I can change the X value. Also, you can have it incrementally scale or offset. So if we have, let's say the Y, or let's say the X value increasing. So I'll make the X, so I'll actually make the X 100, I'll do Z instead. So I'll make Z increment, that can be interesting.
So that gradient.
So,
That's that gradient. So we're going up and as well.
yeah, so it's just increasing each object scale by 7%. So that's on 107. Right, so that's 109. So every object is 9% higher,
Okay.
but
And
not
Z.
bigger in plan,
So it
just in
doesn't
Z.
matter if you do it in Z or X.
No, it does. So if it was
It does.
X and Y, that Y would make it wider that way.
Ah.
And that could be interesting as well, actually.
Yeah.
And then X makes it
Oh.
bigger the other way.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so yeah, you can do really powerful things with this, and
What about making a spiral or like an egg, hello, like an eggshell upside down? How do you...
yeah, you can do all of those. Yeah, so because I mean, try and relate it back to the way you model in real life. So
Yeah,
things like that would be really hard.
That's what I've got to do. That's what I've modeled.
You want to do an eggshell? Yeah.
Well, I mean, the form, I'm just
Yep.
giving you an example of a form.
Yep. So
Like I was doing something else in the picture, and that was one that was cast aside, that was always rubbish, and I had it like that. They're like, oh, I love that one. And then when it happened,
yeah. Yep.
I'm like, great.
Yep.
That wasn't the one I was going for.
Yep. Yeah. Well, okay. So to do more complex forms, often you might start with a shape instead. So you've got all these primitives, and you can do lots with those. So it's good to go through all of these, and then you've got extended primitives as well, which will give you even more complex shapes. So things like capsules, interesting. So they're just a more complex primitive, bit like a cylinder, but they've got a rounded top and bottom. Yeah. So those things can be interesting as well.
And you can cut them away, like you can just go, I'll just cut that off, and then
Oh, yeah.
I'll hollow that out.
Yep. Yep.
Or
Yep. So that's all with booleans. But
what would you use for like a ribbon?
okay. So then for more complex things, you've got shapes. So that's with primitives you can start, and you can do pretty much anything that you can make with your own physical models, because when you're making the physical models, you're always starting either with board or with blocks of balsa, things that are tangible, physical pieces of geometry.
Generally, people are rigid, aren't
They are, but that's the way you've got to work, because that's how you build. These sort of crazy esoteric things that people want to make all the time, you can't build.
I was trying not
Yep.
to. I went for a really square, like
Yep.
all my concepts really square,
Yep.
and now it's being turned upside down and round.
Yeah, well, you can definitely then deform it when it's a model. So that's the other thing. So if you start with regular shapes, but then you can deform them. So here again we've got the primitives or under geometry. But if you go to shapes, then you can draw lines and use them as a starting point instead. And that's much better for free form. So with lines, you've got the type, the initial type and drag type down the bottom. At the moment they're on corner, so I'm going to change them both to smooth, I think, to start with, just so you can see how to do more freeform things. So it's, yeah, that's
What
all.
was this section called again?
So lines, I'm under shapes and then lines. Yep. So then I'm going to draw some points. So notice how they're automatically smooth no matter what I do. Right, because I've chosen those options. Okay, so then I'll right click to finish it. And now we want to make that 3D. So I've just right clicked into the perspective viewport so that I can zoom out there and show you the whole thing. And I'll right click again. Yeah, right clicking is like cancel. But it doesn't deselect. Yeah, so it just means you don't have to let go of the mouse and use the keyboard, which makes it easier. So it doesn't deselect though, which is nice. So you keep the object selected, but you can go on to something else. And so then I'm going to go to the Modify tab. And then under the Modifier list, I'll go to Extrusion. Yep. I'm just going to increase the amount there. Right, so notice how with Max you can extrude anything. It's not like Revit. Yep. Okay, so it's just with a line and then you add extrude. That's it.
And what about if you wanted the wall at an angle?
Okay, so then,
Lines sort of kind of go like, lines can be up like that, and
Yep.
it's going to be spiral.
yep. So, okay, spiral's a bit more complicated, but essentially what you can do now is either convert it to an editable poly, or an editable poly.
A what? A vegetable poly?
Editable poly. So, yep. So to convert it, you right click and then go down to convert to editable poly. But you can't go back. So you just right click and then you get this menu. But yeah, think twice before you do that, because you can't turn it back into lines again after that.
If you want that, you're going to redraw.
Yeah, that's right. So what I'll do instead...
So save as and have a second copy.
That's a good idea too, yep, save as, yep. But what I'm going to do instead though is go to Edit Poly under Modifier, on the modifier list. So if you use Edit Poly, that adds it as a modifier rather than converting the object into something else.
So Edit Poly and then...
So now you can see there's the line still there, that's the extrude, and then there's the poly at the top. Edit Poly. So I'm going to choose Vertex. And now I can choose these points, make them different heights. So you can do whatever you want there. So it's really freeform, and you know, it's just like SketchUp, except more powerful, essentially. So you can do pretty much any form you can think of this way.
So you can also even use draw cube,
Yeah, you can. Yep.
Cube, then you just select
That's a really good example.
Edit
Yeah.
Poly.
Exactly. I'll do exactly that. That's a really good example. That's often how I'll start things. So instead of starting with a line, you can start with a box, and that's why it's called. This is often called box modelling.
Can you drag the bottom in?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah, I'll do that too. Yeah. So here I'll just grab a box and bring it up, and then I'll go to the Modify tab to change the size. So maybe I want a sort of diagonal wedge that goes through and covers up the helicopter. Okay, so now I'm going to, instead of using Edit Poly, I will convert it because a box is a fairly easy thing to make. So I'm going to right click and then convert to Editable Poly. And notice how you've got similar options. So I can go to Vertex here and I'll select the two on the side there, and I can just move them out. You can then just select the top, bring that up. All these things that would take all day in Revit, but that are easy with Max. And so if I go to Polygon, I can choose that whole face and just bring that in. You can go to Edge if you want to get just a whole side, bring that out.
Can you make it hollow?
Oh yes, of course, yeah, yeah. I'll come back to that though, because some different ways of doing that. So, okay, so I've got some things to play with, and then maybe I'll go back to the outer one, and then with Vertex there, like you're saying, you can bring the bottoms in. So if I want to bring just these points across, and select those, and then drag them separately. Yep.
Do you mind me sitting here?
No, it's right, it's fine.
I can't understand what I'm looking at because I can't read it. So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So that's it. So then you can model almost anything with one of those methods.
So that box is actually really important.
Well, just being able to make polys, or they're actually called
Modify list.
either modify a list to get to edit poly, or convert to editable poly. And so now though, the last thing I'm going to do, I'm going to give this a bit of thickness. So this is a thin surface at the moment. I want it to have some thickness, so I'm going to go and from here choose shell. It's another modifier, and then I can give the whole thing a consistent thickness, which is a nice simple thing you can do.
So shell stands for...
Shell.
I thought shell was going to be a texture.
Yeah, no, it's like a 3D offset.
Okay.
Really. Yep. So, okay, so I've got a basic mesh that I can play with. You know, it's not the best, but at least it's a pretty good example of the things you can do. So I'm going to now save it as a 3ds Max file. So and then I'll switch over to Revit. Oh no, sorry, so one last thing. Sorry, back into Max. Sorry, I forgot last thing. Before I do that, I'm going to go now to Export in the main menu. And then I'll go to the same folder. And I'm going to change the format down the bottom to AutoCAD DWG. Yep. Yep. Yep, AutoCAD is the best format for Revit. So I've given it a name, so I'm going to click Save, and I'm just going to leave all these options on default and click OK. That's done. So now I'll go back to Revit, and I'm going to make a new file, architectural template. Oops. There we are. And so I want to bring that AutoCAD into Revit using massing. Yeah. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to go to Massing and Site. And then, yep, Massing and Site, and then In Place Mass. Oh, so it's under Massing and Site, and then you've got In Place Mass. So when you get this message, you can just hit Close, and I'll call it Concept Model. Okay, so now I'm going to go to Insert, and then Import CAD.
Can't we directly import the used name?
No,
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 I
you
was
can't.
thinking we were going to do. I thought we were just going to, I was like, I know what you do, you just go into the folder and...
Yeah, no, you can't. Yep.
So import CAD file.
Yep, Import CAD, and then just find the file that you've made from Max. There it is. And I'm just going to click Open. Okay. Normally it won't take very long, but because I've got that helicopter in there, yeah, there's a little bit in there, so just get all out of that. Okay, so that's taking a bit longer than it should, but it will get there usually. Let's just see how big the file is. Maybe it's bigger than I realise. I haven't done the helicopter before, but it shouldn't be that big. Oh no, okay, so it's only 4 meg, so that's not that big. It's just getting a bit overworked, but here we go, it should be coming back. Oh, maybe, yeah, possibly. Yeah. Oh, yeah, they can, but yeah. Yeah, so it's a 3D model, so if I go into a 3D view, No. Yep. No. Oh, so it's done that automatically, right? Because, well, it needs to because of the way Revit works. So, but that's okay. I'm going to show you how to make that into walls in a minute. So, okay. So now I'll finish that, and okay. So here it's got an error because there's too much detail in that model. Okay, so what I need to do is go back into Max and export it in pieces. So I'm going to just use Control and select the two main shapes that I've made. And then the main, yeah, and it was the helicopter though. That's the main problem. I'll bring that in separately. That's okay. So I'm going to go back on the main menu to export, and then this time export selected. And then again, still with AutoCAD DWG, and we'll just call this concept model massing. So, yeah, well, yeah, that's it. So, yeah, well, no, so here though, I'll get rid of this. So I'm going to delete this. Oh, it's pinned. So I'll just unpin that.
So did you just hit shift play to go back?
So,
You had to select the two items.
Control,
Okay.
yeah.
And just select items.
Yeah. Okay, so now I'll go back to Insert, Import CAD, and then choose my new file. And you can see how much faster that is now because it's taken the helicopter out. So I'll finish the mass now. And you can see there that it's giving me a warning, but that's fine. So just wanted to show you there how I can make Revit objects from this now. So I'm going to go to the Massing and Site tab, and then just go to Wall. And so notice how I can choose these objects. So if I change, I'll leave it on Finished Face Exterior, and then I'm just going to choose the outsides of this. Right, that's how easy it is. These.
Do that again.
So well, I'll do it with these things now. So these are the slanting ones, so they're a bit harder, but I can get, well, you can see there, these aren't working. Some of them are,
How can you see it now?
because it won't let me select them. Right, so these are okay, and this is something that you've got to watch out for,
They're
isn't
not
it?
slanted, so then that makes your design less visible then.
Yeah, well, to a point, yep. So what you need to do then is try a different format. So that's not working with the AutoCAD format. It's because of the geometry. So I'm going to go back and export selected again, and this time I'll use the SAT format, which is a solid SAT, ACES SAT, which is a format for solid modelling essentially. So, so I'll call this.
Why does it say that is that and then you don't have to go back?
Oh, because it does too much. This format's a bit, it does things that you don't want sometimes. So AutoCAD is generally the better option. Okay, so I'll go back now into in-place mass. And then again, insert, import CAD, and this time I'll change it to ACES SAT. And there's my new file. Okay, so that's now come in. We can see it there. I might go back and I'll finish this one, and I'll just select the previous one. And I'll hide that for now, so that you can see the new one. So there's the new one. Right, so it looks very similar, but if I go now to Massing and Site and then Wall, notice how it can pick those things now. You have to do the triangular surfaces when they're sloping like that, but they still work. I've chosen the top there, I don't want that, so I'll undo that and just go back to choosing these.
So did you select, sorry, I missed a step. Did you select wall? I thought you said
Wall by face, so it's under Massing, and then you've got Wall there, which is Wall by face.
Oh, I've never used that one.
Yeah, so it's for things like this, when you've already got the, yeah. Yeah, Revit structure is very different. Yeah. So here I can choose all of these and just converts them for me. So notice, even though it's a brick wall, they can follow.
The thickness is the thickness of your 3D
Yep.
is different to what you've
The
got
thickness is
wall,
from the
so
wall.
You need to change.
Yeah, if you want that, or you can just use the. You only need to use one side.
You're doing one side.
Yeah.
And you do the other side with the material if you want.
If you want to, yeah, you can do whatever you like. Yeah.
You can do it if you want. Take
So yeah, so the massing is basically there as a starting point.
And you can also use it as insulation of the room, isn't
You can, yeah, but I mean, you want to just use it as a way of getting the forms that you want. When you're doing,
Take the materials
The
that
culture, we are creating space and then we have to insert the installation map and then if those wall like this, we can create that in 2D maps and then bring it later.
yeah, you
So-
can, yeah.
You're on this one here.
Yep. So that works, but then what I'm going to do now is click on this button here, and that will hide the massing. Now, so it's not because it's coming from AutoCAD, but I can just hide it manually, just so you can see. So they're the Revit walls. Now you're going to get these lines, but they'll still look good when you render. So if I make a camera view through here, and then go to, say, realistic and then try to render this.
We're going to annoy you for a figure.
Oh, that's right.
Very studious today, aren't you?
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so we can render that. The walls are a bit back to front, but it will work in the end. So, so that's one approach to modelling. But if you're doing, so remember it's a modelling
Is that
subject.
whole massing and site panel not used for using? So it's just like, to get your, just got to play with it.
Yeah. So that's if you want to use maths for modelling, and you can do lots of freeform modelling, and you might even just end up presenting the 3D views from 3ds Max.
Can you add water on this one, like a waterfall?
If you want to do water, I'd look at using Lumion, maybe. Yeah, it's another program. Yeah, but yeah, have a think about that. If you need to, I'll go through it with you though. If you need to do water, it's a bit more complicated. Because water's not, it's not a simple thing. So anyhow, there's lots. Revit's got a water material, but that's about it. So anyhow, I just wanted to show you that though, because Max is a great modelling program, and for freeform modelling and conceptual modelling, it's the program I use the most. But you've got to have an idea for your design, and also it's only really necessary if you have a lot of spatial or conceptual modelling to do. The other approach is to use Revit. So in Revit, instead of using the AutoCAD, so the 3ds Max model that I've made, you can use massing. So I'm going to click In Place Mass again, and we'll call this Revit massing. And I'll make something similar. So if I had, I actually do have some models that I was going to import. Yeah, so I'll just start with lines, and let's see, I'll draw. Actually, I'm going to cancel this. I'm going to do it in a new file. So I'll just make a new file with the architecture template again. And then, again, I'll import a model. So I've got some models set up that I can just import. So I'm going to go to Insert, Import CAD, and then get my AutoCAD file. So I've got a Spatial that I've set up earlier.
Maybe I thought I'd show the others as well.
Yeah.
So that's a free model that you found,
Yeah.
like a free 3D
Yep.
AutoCAD
Yep.
model.
No, that was in 3ds Max as well.
Oh, this
It was
model,
3ds
okay.
format. So that was from NASA.
Okay.
And yeah, so they give out models of all of their spaceships and everything in 3D format. But I had to take them to 3ds Max first and then save it as an AutoCAD file to get it into Revit.
That's handy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now
So
though,
always do that.
yeah, pretty much, yeah. So then to do the massing here, instead of getting it from 3ds Max, I'm going to go to Massing and Site in Revit. Again, In Place Mass. And then I'll call it again, Concept Model. And then with the line tool, I'm going to change to Draw on Work Plane. That's really important, otherwise it'll try to pick a face. So you've got to choose that option below to draw in work plane. And then now I'm just going to draw the points that I want. Now, I actually want these to be curved, so I'll change to drawing an arc and draw as much as I can with arcs. I'll smooth that later. Doing it fairly roughly, but trying to get a bit of smoothness in there.
This would be good for some people. Someone did do it. Oh, Alex, she's done a shutter.
Yeah. So I'll go back to drawing straight lines. Yeah, you can do a lot with these things to get forms. The problem is when you try and show too much detail, I think. But yeah, so if here I just trace this side of it with some lines, and then I'll just do all of this with lines too. Maybe an arc here. Oh yeah, it's because of the way it's been modelled, but I can adjust that. So I've got the shape I want, and I'll finish it there. Maybe I'll just come down here. Yeah. So I'm going to make a 3D view now, and so you can see there that the shape's flat on the ground. So, yeah, I'm just going to do one side, and then, so I'm going to select that, and then now go to create form. So that gives it a height, a bit like extruding it. Notice I'm not worrying about giving this one a depth. So now, if say I want to change the slope, I can select some of the lines at the top. I'm just orbiting to get a good view, so I'm going to select some of those lines using control. So I'm just going to select a few of these edges going around the top there. So notice how you can select the individual edges. It's not like the other things you make in Revit.
Is it just by a click, or are you holding down control?
Yeah, I'm holding down control and then just clicking on the edges that I want to move. So I just want those.
Yeah.
So now I'll go to the site view so I can see it from above. I'll hit the move button and then just click a base point and then take it in the direction I want. So now that part of it's sloping. So if we go to 3D, you can see that.
Yep.
That's something you couldn't do normally in Revit. If it was an extrusion or anything like that.
I was trying to do that in Revit last project, last semester.
No, it won't let you.
I've spent a whole weekend just
no,
trying to, I was doing that cave wall.
Yeah, not
and
possible.
all those little dots at every point, I just went mental. Like 1 minute I'd get it, the next minute I couldn't do it again. Like I couldn't.
Yeah, no,
I didn't get it.
Yeah, so but see, if you've done, the more you've done with Max, the easier this will be.
Yeah.
The interface is basically from 3ds Max. That's one of the reasons we start with Max.
So I somehow end up in all these organic shapes all the time.
Yeah, so I'd avoid it if you can. But yeah, I know. Yeah. So then, when you select the edges, you can see you get these gizmos, which look a lot like the ones in 3ds Max.
Yeah, they're tricky, those ones.
Yeah, well the key though is to know that you can change. So here it's got the blue arrow pointing up, but the other two are orange. That means they're coming from this edge. But if I press space, it changes to red, green, blue.
Say that again?
So you press space to toggle between the axes and X, Y, Z. So orange means it's parallel with this edge. If you press space, then it's back to X, Y, Z, which is usually better. So then if I go and select, instead of selecting an edge, I'm going to select this corner. So that's the vertex. And again, space, it's orange, while it's following this angle, but again, space again, and it's back to X, Y, Z. So that's it. That's it. So I've got this edge, or this surface, but I want to make something solid now. So I'm going to go to the ground floor plan, and going to do something extra. I'm going to make a reference plane.
Do you have to select what floor plane it goes in? I know this might be a dark question, but I'm just thinking a little bit. So that when as soon as you insert it, it goes straight onto the ground floor? We don't have to set that up?
Yeah, no, it does.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
Dark question.
That's right. So here I'm going to draw a new reference plane. So make sure you realise that when you're working massing, you've got model, that's for lines and other shapes. Then you've got reference, they're for reference lines.
Yeah.
They're not reference planes. So then below that you've got plane, that gives you reference planes. So that's what I'm going to use. So I'm going to draw a reference plane through here. Right, and just take that straight down. Extend it up. And I'm going to give that a name. So I'm going to call this and right, so I've got that plane. Now I'm going to go to the elevation. I'm going to go to the west elevation. And then I'm going to make some circles. So I just clicked on the circle button, and now it's asking me for a plane. But I can choose the plane I've just made because I've given it a name. So it's called Yep. So now I'm going to draw over these. Just by eye, it's good enough. And to see the other one, I'll go back to wireframe. Yeah, it's a little bit hectic, but you'll work it out.
Like a Sunday morning.
Yeah, but there we go, that's pretty good. And I can just change the size there. And I'll make them both the same. I have to make them all the same. So you can still type in measurements just like normal. And, oops. Okay, so I've got my 3 circles. And then I'm going to go to the 3D view just so that you can see them all. So you can see them there. Right, so I'm going to select all 3 with control and then click on create form, and it's going to give me an error. Right, and that's because with massing, the number of objects you select affects the way it works. So in this situation, it's better to do them separately. So I'm going to select one, then create form, and it will give me a choice between either extrude or revolve. They're the 2 options. So I'm going to choose extrude, and now I can extend that further if I want to, or type in the depth. Go for, yeah. Okay, so I'll just do the same with the others. So again, just got to choose each time, and then it's that easy. Okay, so I'm just going to make maybe one other thing.
And then you hide the shuttle and then you're left with the form?
Yeah, that's right, exactly, yeah. So I'm just going to make something from the ground plane now with a line again. So I'm going to trace maybe the cockpit there. It's very rough, so I'll just do that very nicely. In fact, I'll just do one side and then I'll look at how to mirror. So, okay, so now the shuttle's getting in the way, so I might finish that. And then I'll duplicate the view. And then we'll call this ground floor shuttle. So now I can go back to the original ground floor and hide that shuttle. Yep.
Yeah, cool.
So that makes it much easier. So then I can select that massing and then go back to edit and place to keep working on it.
Yeah. So
there's a few tricks with the shapes. So there, if I select those lines, notice how they come up as one thing. I just want to select some of them, so I'm going to click again to select one segment. Yeah. Then I'm going to hold down Control and select the other parts that I want. Click Copy, and then snap to the endpoint there to copy it. So now it's still all one connected chain. Yeah. Oh, you got the video? So I'm going to select that again, and this time I'll use mirror draw axis,
Yeah.
and just,
flip it over.
that's it, draw along there.
Oh, Danny.
So now it's all
Oh,
one thing.
Danny.
Yeah. So then I
It's
can...
like Danny in Greece right now.
Right, so now I'll again select it and then click Create Form, and
pull
we've
it
got,
up,
we've got an
yeah.
extrusion.
Yeah. Can't you just insert USB here, Jenny, with your files?
Yeah,
Your
well,
brain?
yeah, but well, again here I'm going to do the same as before. So I finished the math, so I can duplicate the view. So notice how you've got to do your view changes separately. So I'm going to make a 3D view for the shuttle. And then in the original, again, I'll hide it. So I've got these things that I can maybe now start turning into building, but actually I need more of a solid. So I'm going to go back and, yeah, so I do want to show you that you can make a surface. That's sometimes useful. So I'll go back and do one more example of that. So I'll just put in a... maybe I'll have a line going through the middle that we can do something interesting with. So I'll do just a couple of things there. So I've done a line, and again I'm just going to select that, and then again create form. So that's good if you want to make surfaces, and they're really good because you can still then do interesting things. So I could change the top corner, have that at a different angle. Yeah, yep. So it's really flexible, and
Can you select the line and turn it into a curve?
no, that's harder. Yeah. So okay, but this one I want to make that solid now. So it's got all these different parts. So if I want to select the whole thing, I've got to use Tab. So I'm just going to go to the edge there, press Tab, and that'll highlight the whole thing. Then I'm going to go to Dissolve. And that takes it back to the original shape. So I've got the shape there on the ground, they're the original lines, and I've got the shapes on the top. Yep.
I've never heard of dissolve. Can you show me that again?
So yeah, so I'll just undo and just show that. Yeah. So go back. So again, got to select the whole shape first.
Yep,
So tab, get the whole element,
Mhm.
and then just click Dissolve.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to delete the top part. Because I want to go back now and add in more to this shape. So I'll get rid of that point as well. And now I'll go back to drawing some more lines, and I'm just going to extend that shape so that it's going to be solid. Don't know, something like this. Make sure I go to the endpoint there. Got to be careful here. Right on the endpoint, that's it. Okay, so
Attention to detail.
yep, that's it. You have to, because it won't. If it's not joined properly, it won't work properly. So
Me.
yep. And so now I'm actually going to do one thing extra. I'm going to use trim to corner here
Yep.
and make sure these things are joined,
Yep.
because they don't look like they are. Yep. Yeah. So yeah, so now even though they're two separate things, I can select them both with Control, and if I use Create Form, notice how it gives me a solid shape.
Yep. Oh, Jenny.
And you'll see why that will give you some interesting things. So now I can still, if I want to drag these edges back to get a slope.
Are they solid or they're,
Yep,
Did
it's
you
solid.
put this in a video?
It's all being recorded.
It's all in the #1 video?
It's being recorded now. Yeah, so okay, so I'm just using Control to select these edges along the top, because sometimes it's a bit tricky to move those. So I want to move all of these back. Right, so I've selected them, and because I've selected multiple, I can't see that gizmo anymore. But that's okay, I can still go back to the, say, the site plan, where I can see them from above, and then click the Move button, and then move them just like anything else in Revit. So now I've got the slope that I want.
But we knew, because the shape wasn't straight, so we knew it was more curved,
Yeah,
like more big, really.
yeah, I just moved the top edges so the bottom stayed as it was, so now that slopes. And so, right, so then now we can go more into the massing modelling tools. So once I finish this, I might just save it now to, we'll call this, set up. Okay, so once that's saved, so now I'm going to select the mass, and then you can see there you get this option, mass floors. But before that's useful, you need to think about your levels. So I'm going to go to the elevation there, south elevation. You can see I've got some levels. So I've just got two levels, ground floor and level 1. It's going to extend level 1 out so I can see it. And then I might just bring that down, and then I'll go and make another level from the next floor. And maybe one for the roof. That'll do. Maybe we'll make this 35, and this one can be 65, and then at least 3. Yeah. Oh no, make that 7,000, and then this one's 3. Yeah. So, right, so now back into the 3D view. So I'm going to select this mass, and then go to mass floors, and then tick the levels I want. Click OK, and it slices it with your floor plates. Yeah. Yep. So then we can still make walls. So now I'll go back to massing inside again, and this time with the wall tool, I might change it this time to a simpler wall. So I'll just go to a generic wall, and I'll change the location line to finish face interior, and I'll choose some of these walls. So you can see how easy it is to just turn these surfaces, even if it's flat surface like this. You can easily make walls. Like, so that's how you do those really crazy walls that you might see other people do. And then here again, back to wall, and I'll get some of these. So if you get a message like this, normally you can just click OK. It just means the joining is creating some problems. Well, it can be difficult, so sometimes the only way is to change the justification. So I'll delete this one, delete all of these, and then I'll go back and make walls again, this time with finish face exterior. Sometimes works better. Exactly. So you can see there that's doing a better job. So I'll skip that wall and just go to this one and this one, skip that and that, and just do those. Yeah, so even there it's got a problem, but well, it doesn't look too bad. So, yep, I'll just do one here. Yep. And maybe, oops, maybe the back. Okay, so I've got all these solid walls. Now I want to see what it looks like without the massing. So if you go back to the massing and site tab, then you can click on that first button there. Now, so let's cancel this. What's going on there? It's giving me some errors. Okay, so this is where I'm going to save the file. See, it's misbehaving a bit. I'm going to check my view settings and see if massing, for some reason massing's turned on. Someone's played with the template, so we'll turn that off. There we go. So now that's better. So now the massing toggle works to hide the massing quickly. Then I can see just the solid walls. And so then I'll go back to bring it back to here. And then maybe I want to get a different kind of wall. So I'll go to, instead of wall, I'm going to go to curtain system. So maybe I'll choose the end here. And then with this, you've got to click create system. And so I'll do that for these as well. So each time, create system. So this one I'll do, oops, not there, so I don't want that, so I'll clear selection. And then again, try again, create system. And don't worry about, it's a bit tricky changing the angles of these, but don't worry too much about that. You're not expected to go into too much detail. Oh, you can, that's right, you can do that. Yeah, there's a few different ways. But sometimes not bad. I mean, that can be interesting when you get these sort of diagonals that are different. So, again, I'll choose these as well in that system. And, yep, so then, once you're finished, okay, so then I can use the floor tool here and choose those floor plates now.
Was one of them
Yep, and then again, create floor. So that makes them solid. Then you've got... Oh, yeah, they are. So they're all part of the same floor plate. But we can take that out, so you can always edit the boundary after you've made it and just delete that part. But it could be an interesting thing.
So it's running across the whole form.
Yeah.
From here to here to
Exactly.
here, even out
Yeah,
there.
yeah, that's it. In here as
so
well.
then-
Yeah. So, but that can be interesting. So then the last thing is the roof. So you've got the roof tool there. So I can choose the top. Create roof.
Endless possibilities.
Yep. So I've got an enclosed building.
Wow.
Now I can click on massing again and just show what's left.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm a bit excited.
So yeah, you can get some really interesting things, and you know, if the source, I think the trick is to not make the source obvious. When you can see the vehicle, that's right. But you can get sort of interesting things like this. You can just try and keep it abstract. So
Well, we can.
We only got this concept model, we haven't figured out the space model yet, so it's for the space model that's visual, that's really.
Yeah, but that's where it comes from, is from this.
Yeah.
That's the concept. If you can turn your concept.
The interior, so
But if you can draw up your concept into 3D map now, then that's where you'll play around and get this will be for your exterior sort of stuff.
And so don't forget, you can make camera views anytime and start viewing it in perspective. There's my stupid shuttle, which I don't want to see anymore.
I was going to say like the elephant in the room.
Well, that's it, yeah. Once you see it, it sort of gives it away that where it's come from, but if you can't see it, then it makes all the difference. And sure, thanks.
What are you going to call this video?
There we go.